So the last question, this bike looks like a Factor, is it 1 or the Ostro? Which I think it does because of the headset and the tubing.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on that? Don't you think it looks like a Factor knockoff voice?
This is my normal speaking volume.
Okay, that's the volume?
Yeah.
1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, I think we're good. Welcome back to our video, guys. Today I'm here with Jack. He's the bike doctor and it's a special one. We have a Seka Exceed. Jack, before we begin, thank you so much for coming out today.
You're most welcome.
Could you probably just introduce yourself and tell us about this bike that's here today?
I'm Jack from the Bike Doctors. I own it, and I've actually formed it in 2011, and it was all about restoring bicycles, giving them a new lease of life, and keeping them on the road. And this was sparked up by the retro bike collection that I had in the past for a good 10 years. And starting 2021, I've actually done this I've started embarking onto this full time. And then there were a lot of pivotal moments this year, and slowly but surely the brand actually started into Vortex as what you see on the bike, and Seka, the two biggest brands in China, and they are no longer like low-end, Chinese-made, cheap carbon frames, cheap wheels. They aren't those. They are the highest end with the most pride, and they actually put in a lot of effort into it, which will go along the way later.
You run a home-based shop.
Yes.
Could you tell us more about that? So are you also the Seka distributor?
I distribute exclusively the Vortex, and then I also start selling the Seka. Seka, I would like it to remain as a boutique brand for now, so that I can actually cater to the client's needs as well as the fitting purposes before they actually take the full bike and go out there, because as it is a very high-end product, and we also want that to be an exclusive kind of experience for the riders.
Right. So when you approached me and you told me you had a Seka, I had no idea this was made in China, because it doesn't look like a brand that would have been coming out from a factory in China. I thought it was like a Croatian brand, until someone on my Discord and Instagram told me, hey, this is a Chinese bike, and they started asking questions about that, which we'll come to a bit later.
Yes.
So this is your personal bike?
Yes, it is my personal bike.
Right. And can you just run us through what is your height and the frame? What is the size of the frame?
So I am 178 by height. My Inseam is approximately 81 without shoes. So I understand that with shoes there are certain variations which most of the guys who do bike fitting will be able to explain. I'm not particularly familiar with this, but based on the measurements that I had, I always go for a size down, even though I'm in between sizes. For Seka itself, the size is slightly smaller. I actually supposed to fit on an L, but I wasn't brave enough to do that, so I actually stuck to a M size frame, which is why you actually see the stack a bit higher, which is perfectly normal for most bikes. Yeah.
Okay. And what is the frame weight? Because it was pretty light when I was transporting it around. I'm guessing it is a 7, being a disc brake, I think it's a 7.6, if my guess is correct.
So the frame itself, unpainted, it's actually about 770 grams. When I actually unboxed it and I actually weighed it, was actually about 900 grams, thereabouts, like very, very different, like very, very minutely off. The full bike as it is, with frame rate, with all the computer mounts, as well as the Inseam dual side pedals, and this set of Vortex 4 and 6 wheels, they are actually 7.3.
Wow.
And this saddle as well.
Right. And okay, we were talking about price as well. Before we go into the details of the components that you have on this bike, what's the price? Because this is fully kitted out with the highest Inseam rate, man, on a Chinese bike. So yeah, Heaters, what is the number on this?
It's anywhere between 14 to 15,000, depending on where you get your parts from. But that's the number that you're looking at.
So for a 14 to 15K bike, you could probably get a pretty decent mainstream brand, right? I'm not going to name which brands for 14 or 15,000. Don't you think most people would then pivot to that kind of, to that direction rather than a Chinese bike?
They would. That's why for myself, I usually make sure that I have ready-built bikes for people to just have a feel. The experience comes in, most importantly, in tandem with the feel before you spend the money. Most of the bike shops can't give you that kind of experience to tell you how good their bikes are. Of course, you will buy the brand based on the different mainstream brands out there, but there are not many of the mainstream brands in the industry now who are going to stick by and say that we have a lifetime warranty on the frame itself. That's what Seka actually guarantees, and they actually make sure that they deliver.
And does this come in a complete bike build or is just a frame?
At the present moment, because of the shortage of group sets, we do not do the group set, the full bike builds.
And how much does the frame retail for?
Frame retails for about 355.
Okay. Right. And how many variants does Seka have?
So Seka actually has this one, which is the Racing Day Combatant, which is the XC RDC. And then there is one down, which is the Exceed, and then followed by the climbing bike, which is a Field.
Yeah, so now maybe let's move on to the specifics of the bike, if you could run us through every detail.
Well, this whole bike, you've got, let's start off with the group set, which is the sticking out point. These are SRAM red. I've actually done a ceramic upgrade on these as well, on the JRC jockey wheels. I don't sort of believe in oversized pulley wheels because I've actually seen a lot of low quality ones over the years, and they actually end up hindering the shifting process. I've also got JRC bottle cages over here. This is a size M frame, like I mentioned, and then the bar is actually a 400 by 100 bar there. In terms of saddle, this is a Saddle Italia Novus Kit Carbonio, so it's a carbon wheel, as you can see over here. And then we talk about the wheels. I've got the Vortex New Concept 4 and New Concept 6, so 40mm in the front and 60mm in the rear. If you're actually looking at your screen right now and you're thinking, oh, the spoke look really thick, they're carbon fiber. So, and then they run on ceramic bearings and oversized flange, which you'll see in details later. And then there is also a 160 front rotor and 160 rear. So for this kind of weight, it is very rare to come across. And then, of course, the Axioma dual side pedal for power reading.
So let's talk about the wheels. These are they made in China as well? These are Chinese brand wheels?
Yes, they are made in China, and they are Chinese wheels, proudly Chinese. If you can see later on, you'll see horns and Yu on the side. These wheels actually have a 40-60 setup, which I've actually done for Singapore. When you actually run on a 40mm wheel, the wheel setup is only about 1.28. When you're actually running on a 60mm pair, front and rear, they are approximately 1.47. So to put it into context, they're actually super light for the profile that they are running on. But with a 40-60, it's actually about 1.38, 1.41 thereabouts. The weight is incredible because for Singapore, we don't want to sort of have too high of a profile, increasing the weight, and then you end up not being able to power up the bike. When you're running on a 40, it might feel a bit too light. So with the 40-60 setup, it's actually perfect for Singapore's rolling terrains that we have. A little bit of climbs because I spend a lot of time at Mount Faber itself, as well as trying to target all the different climbs, so that I can actually do the testing of my products when I actually push them towards the limits, taking corners and really pushing them.
How much does these wheels retail for?
They are going for 3.5, about there as well.
Okay, not the cheapest. And how do they perform?
I would say that they have surpassed my expectations. They roll really well because they don't run on a traditional 6-paw ratchet. They run on a star ratchet, and I've actually been testing on a new. So these are actually 36 teeth engagement. I'm actually testing a 60 teeth engagement as well, just to see whether the experience is better. But so far it's marginally different. In terms of between the hubs itself, I think is a talking point. And then we talk about like wheel balancing in this. it actually helps to smooth out the entire riding process. So as you can see, some of these guys who actually started reviewing these wheels, they sort of talk about how smooth the wheels are. It's also because of the balancing. So they actually take all the technology you learn from like cars and motorcycles and input them into bicycles itself. Because a lot of companies don't really cross-reference to technology which has been run for many years into the bicycles. And slowly, once they actually go into the bicycles, I think that the technology that we are experiencing today will actually push forward the experience in terms of the technological side as well as the experience side towards customers and riders out there.
Last but not least, the frame performance of this frame.
It is mind-blowingly good. I've not had a bike, an aero bike, which is light. Seka sort of markets this as a lightweight aero frame, and it's an endurance geometry. Yesterday, to start off the Rafa 500, I actually did approximately 83 clicks, no aches, and here I am today doing this. The experience was just mind-blowingly good because I've actually done to date approximately 500 clicks and just did the first wash for this today. The bike goes when it needs to go. It holds its speed really well, and I've not had an aero bike or even a lightweight climbing bike that actually urges me to go forward whenever I do a climb. This bike is stiff right down from the handlebar to the oversized headset, and it actually goes down to the bottom bracket and it transfers direct onto the wheel. So you don't really feel like there's a power loss, and you don't feel like you need to change your riding style in order to fit up to the bike. And it has remained that, and it's very, very impressive.
Right. So this channel being a very honest channel, and so far you're only telling me the good stuff, so I want to know the bad stuff. What do you not like about the bike?
I think it's very difficult, like we start off, right, that it is a Chinese brand. The connotation to Chinese brand has been inked towards the last maybe 15 years of bad quality products. And now having to push a brand like Seka or to push Vortex as a brand in Singapore, for most people above and beyond your channel, to say that it's a Chinese brand, it's one of the biggest setbacks and one of the biggest challenges, which has to be proven by experience rather than just the name of it or the made in, because we have to look at it holistically across the whole industry. Carbon fiber technology is probably one of the most sought after and one of the most used today. And what consumers don't really realize is that majority of the carbon fiber technology are made in Asia, and we should be recognizing that and also pay respect to that as well.
Okay, I'm going to take a break first. Yeah. Okay, so let's go on to the Instagram Q&A. In fact, we have 7 pages worth. There might be multiple questions that are repeated, so I'll just pick the good ones. Okay, so the first one, are you ready?
Sure.
How is the build quality?
Build quality, superb. Like, I've not had a complaint with them. In fact, I actually left the bike when it arrived. I left it at the site of the work area, and I didn't touch it for 2 weeks because I didn't want to have bias anxiety and have a biased opinion. When I opened it up, the boxing was very well done, and it was very well protected in a way from the very get-go. And when I started removing parts bit by bit, it was all very well organized. And the frame, I mean, Chinese frames, one of those things, even for European frames, my biggest challenge is, as a consumer, put your finger into the frames, feel the carbon fiber layout.
Okay, so the first thing I can tell, it is very well filed. There's nothing poking out, nothing sharp, which I think is very crucial, right? When especially you're running cables in here, you don't want anything that's protruding out and when you're turning your fork.
Because a lot of times, you see a lot of channels, a lot of different reviewers talking about the outside. But what really happens on the inside is where the mechanics actually start working on. And it's very dangerous because you will have splinters, carbon splinters everywhere. And these guys, they were very well thought down to the inside of the frame. I've not had a single splinter on my hand. And it's very refined on the inside.
Bottom bracket, you mentioned this was a T47. Can you tell us what is a T47 BB and what's so special about it?
So, in the industry over the last couple of years, we've been using a lot of different BBs. Mainly traditional ones, the BSA, the Italian thread, all screw-on. And then, of course, there is the BB 386, 86, BB30, and different sizes altogether, BB90 even. And even dub, like the dub system is proprietary for SRAM. T47 now is the largest, and it is actually a screw-on at the same time. So you eradicate the problem with creaking BB noises 6 months down the road and having to replace the BB every 6 months or even repressing them. These guys are just so big, and as well as the load as well, the load factor in terms of their bearings, they no longer put as much stress onto the bottom bracket. So even traditional cranks like the Shimano's, from the get-go, once after you press it in, you actually start spinning them. It's smoother than the press fit. I think that's the way to go for the long term. Even Specialized now has gone back to BSA. So I think it sort of becomes a very big industrial move now to say that we no longer take on press fit already.
Okay. And you used to, am I right to say that you used to ride a Windspace?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
That's how we got in touch.
Right. Okay. So the question is, how does this bike compare against a Windspace, and why a Seka over a Windspace?
Price point aside, because they're quite vastly different in terms of the price. I've actually had the SLC, which is a climbing bike, and that bike was great, but it was a bit twitchy when you're actually going downhill. On a very honest approach, not talking about Seka or whether it was Windspace. When I was riding the SLC, that was a lightweight build. Whatever parts that were on here was actually on that bike, except for the wheels. I was running on a 40mm on both sides. That bike was about 6.8 kilograms flat, touching UCI limit already. And I was spending a lot of time on it, but it was very, very nervous as a bike. So when I was actually taking corners in Mount Faber and like really trying to push the products, push them to the limits, that bike was a bit twitchy. Talking about T1500, I've not tried it, but I've actually had customers who come in with the T1500, and I also had to service them. The T1500, on the other hand, felt a bit sluggish. A lot of the reviewers have been talking about it. And they pit it against the Giant Propel. I had a Giant Propel earlier this year in somewhere around June 2021. And then I stripped it off in August 2021 after doing about 1,000 clicks. I didn't really like it because it was a bike which I had to change my riding style to suit that bike. And I could not climb with that. And I think that is one of the biggest problems for most riders who want to go out there, buy a bike which is lightweight and then aero, but yet at the same time able to climb, because there's not many able to do that. However, with all that said, I actually did see a few aero frames which were doing very good climbs. I'm not a fantastic climber, I just love climbing. Just mind me saying this. But I've actually seen a Cervelo S5. I think, was that the S5 with the integrated bar? It is, right?
The one with the triangle in the middle?
Yeah.
I think it's S5.
I've actually seen the S5 climb with absolutely no effort at all. So I think that could also be one of those aero bikes which has the climbing capabilities as well as straight line finesse in terms of trying to go as fast as you can. And that's probably what most riders want, to have a diversified riding experience, riding kind of style.
The question is, why is the saddle tip curved downwards, and what difference does it make?
This part?
Yeah.
No idea. I focus more on this area. Usually the tip downwards, I'm not particular I'm not particular about it. But for the Selle Italia saddles, I actually tried all the way for many years actually. I've been going back all the way to 2005. I've actually had the last saddle before this one was actually the Specialized power saddle, which I did a lot of riding before my daughter was born during the lockdown period. And that saddle was great. I just wanted something different because for the Specialized power saddle, you actually have to tilt a bit forward. For these guys, you don't need to, and it's a little bit flatter. So at least that felt a lot nicer in a way. And I sort of settled onto this. And 3 of my bikes, my mountain bike, my road bikes, they are all running on this saddle now.
And this is not a short nose saddle, right?
No, this is not a short nose saddle.
So coming from the Power Mirror, which is a short nose, to this one, would you prefer a short nose or do you like this one?
I think it really depends on the setup of the bike. If your bike is really compact, yes, you need a short nose. If you're riding a little bit longer now in terms of the reach, like what I'm doing now, the bike with a standard nose, I think it's okay.
How do you feel when you ride this bike on the road, and how does other riders look at this bike and can they tell it's a Seka?
Good question. I've never really thought about how people think about it, but when I'm riding, like I mentioned, it's one hell of a ride. It's been really, really fast. I think all my sort of Strava, records has been on a PB the whole entire time, throughout without really pushing, because I just took a 1 month off and then I just started going back for like the last 5 weeks. And this has been the bike which basically just trumped everything that I've had built up with the wind space as well as the Giant. So far, when I ride past that, there are some riders who sort of like open their eyes and like point, but then I do not know whether they're pointing at the bike or whether they're pointing at the pothole. So I don't buy this.
Okay. This is a punny question. Did it manage to exceed your expectations?
Exceeded in many ways.
So you carry this brand, so people who want to buy this brand can reach out to you?
Yes, they can.
Bike doctors, right?
The bike doctors.
So, but those who are not in Singapore, the question is, how much do this bike cost for shipping, and are there any hidden costs which you know?
Countries, various taxes. Shipping, I think you can actually reach out to Cycling 100 for viewers who are overseas. You can check out the rates. They will, because they actually sell some of the products there. Seka doesn't deal with it themselves. So likewise for Vortex, they don't deal with it themselves. So you can check out Cycling 100, decide whether you want to ship it in. There'll be all the various prices tagged to it, mostly in euros. They'll do the conversion. And then at the checkout, they will give you the shipping rates, and then you decide whether you want to buy it or not. So
the last question, this bike looks like a Factor, is it 1 or the Ostro? Which I think it does because of the headset and the tubing.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on that? Don't you think it looks like a Factor knockoff?
Feel like there is a big community out there that think,
oh, they're all the bloody same, you idiots!
But this is the first time where I have actually spent a bit of time examining this call out. For me, the real interesting comparison is the Factor 02 VAM, which I have just out there, I personally own. And while they're different bikes, one's a climbing bike and the other is more of an all-round aero race bike, the carbon layup and the finish is borderline identical. The Factor Ostro, while I haven't seen it in the flesh, examining it online and comparing it to the XC, there's obviously some differences, small differences, but they look pretty close. So I will conclude with saying they're not the same bike, but if I had to make a bet, if I was a betting man, I would say they're probably coming out of the same factory.
It looks like everything in the market, but then when we really look down to the details of it in actual, they are not the same. So in pictures, yes, they look similar, but when you actually look through the details of it, no, they're not. And that has been a question which has been ongoing for a while. I think you really need to see the physical product to sort of decide whether they are the same or not. Yes, of course, there are a lot of things which you can sort of say there is a resemblance, but see the actual product. That's what I sort of conclude at the end of the day.
So I always get this question as in, what bike size should I get? People DM me on Instagram and I say, well, you got to check out the chart and from there you kind of gauge, but sometimes the chart doesn't tell you the true feeling of riding on the bike. So if someone wants to ride and test out the bike before they order, can they get like a demo at your place or do they just have to buy it online?
Yes, please do a demo, because for bikes, like I mentioned from the very start, it's all about the experience. It's all about your feel on the bike. It's all about your personal preference. Everyone has their own preference, like I said, even why I don't slam it down, you know. So I would recommend people to come down. I have got like a collection of sizes. I've got the S size, I've got the M size. L size not yet, because I don't really have that demand. But M size and S size, I do have them, and I usually ask people to hop onto it, go for a round, have a feel. Because at the end of the day, once you have a feel, you know what you want. For newcomers, I would usually pop them onto the trainer, just let them sort of pedal around, have a feel of the entire bike, and then of course check them out, measure them out, see what they really fit. You know, you can have very long torsos, very short torsos, long legs, short legs, long arms, short arms. I think don't just take the final verdict on the size chart. You have to also sort of feel the bike, because every bike's angle, stack height changes the entire feel of the bike, and that I think is detrimental towards buying off the rack. And so that's why I don't really want to sell off the rack to customers and just let them, you know, go out there, get injuries and stuff, because long term, I always look at it from a long-term perspective. And I think that every cyclist out there deserves to ride the bike for as long as they are around, because I think cycling sort of gave me a nice outlet for many things in life, and it has been the most enjoyable thing that I've done.
Yeah, that is very true. So the Bike Doctors, where can we find you? Do you have a website?
Yes, I do have www.bike-doctors.com.
Okay, I'll probably link it above.
Or you can check out on IG, just the Bike Doctors.
Jack, that wraps up the video for today. Thank you so much for coming and explaining the bike. And let's go check out the other bike and we'll film that one. Thank you, and thank you guys for watching. Bye bye.
Thank you.